Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the CIPS Wellington Branch Procurement Graduates Perspectives. What makes a good manager for a grad? Just to advise everyone, the webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to all attendees the following week. I'm Barbara Allen. I'd like to start with a karakia. Kia horo te marino kia whakapapa punamu te moana. Hai hahurahi ma tatu iti rangine. Aroha atu, aroha mai tatu ia tatu katoa. May peace be widespread. May the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other. Tinakotu, tinakotu, tinakotu katoa. My name is Barbara Allen. I'm senior lecturer at Wellington School of Business and Government, as well as a member of the Wellington CIPS committee. And we're getting going quite a series of events these few months after after all our lockdowns and sort of a quiet period for the branch. Along with my fellow committee member, Joseph Gannon, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar. We've had a great response to the topic, so thanks everyone for registering and your interest in today's session. Most of you will know about CIPS, but for those who don't, the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, or CIPS, is a global professional body for procurement and supply professionals dedicated to best practice, continuous improvement, and raising awareness, certainly, about the contribution that procurement and supply management can make to organizations. Certainly something that's been my personal mission for many, many years now. So I really enjoy these events and being involved with CIPS. We're joined today by 4 current and recent graduates of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, or MB. Again, most of you will be quite aware of their procurement graduate program. They're all in the early to mid stages of their procurement career, and we'll provide more background when we introduce each of them very soon. For those of you who aren't aware of the MB program, it's a 2-year program designed to recruit, develop top quality procurement professionals. So one of the best bits is the time spent rotating through 4 different program partners in the public sector, and an opportunity to work on different kinds of procurement, different kinds of projects, and it really varies across the different departments and agencies. And as well, the graduate program will help participants to study towards their CIPS qualifications, so well recognized around the world now, so a great opportunity. So in terms of this seminar, webinar, attracting, developing, and retaining new talent into the procurement profession is really a central role for managers. And we all know we need more and an ongoing development of procurement and supply professionals. So we've invited Isabel, Jessica, Alice, and Harry along to share their experiences to focus on good management. Or the focus of the webinar is on good management and things that enabled them to thrive as they've gone along, and things that have been more difficult, perhaps. I'm going to hand over to Joseph Gannon now to facilitate the discussion with each of our panelists, and then we'll have a Q&A. So thank you, and looking forward to hearing from our panelists.
All right. Hi, everybody. Just before we get started with our panel, I just need to do some Zoom housekeeping. So just let everybody know you should all be on mute. If you're not, could you please make sure you are, just to reduce background noise and any issues that kind of come from that. If you do want to say anything to everyone, you can use the chat box, and there should be an option there that's share with everyone. When we get to the Q&A section, you should see a Q&A box that you can click on, and you can just ask your questions there. We'll be able to see them and we'll ask our panelists those questions. All right, so I will hand over now to Harry. Harry, if you can introduce yourself and then give us an overview of what makes a good manager to you.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Kia ora, everyone. My name's Harry Glynn. I'm a procurement consultant at Air New Zealand. Very recently joined the airline, only started last week. But prior to that, I was a procurement advisor at Auckland Transport. My introduction to the MB Procurement Grad program was back in 2019. I did 3 rotations. So my first rotation was actually at MB, second one, Department of Internal Affairs, and then a 3rd rotation at Auckland Transport. And yeah, you can probably guess I ended up with a full-time procurement advisor role after that. I had a really great experience throughout the whole grad program, really accelerated my procurement career. So yeah, keen to share some of the insights and my thoughts around my experience there. So one key thing that I found that really helped with my development and the grad and manager relationship was just where the manager has a growth mindset towards the graduate or young professional that comes in. So what I mean by that is that they recognize that this is talent that can be nurtured, as opposed to just having a fixed mindset that this is an experienced resource that might just be used for lower level or kind of admin tasks. It's not really the purpose of having the grad program. Graduates actually have a lot to offer, even if it's not in terms of technical experience. They would have gone through quite a rigorous recruitment process to firstly get on the program. They often will have aptitude, curiosity, and an ability to learn quickly, which is really important. And you'll find you actually get good results when you can recognize that, give them some challenging projects that will stretch them, but also help them develop and grow while they're at your agency. So yeah, in terms of that, I think what it's also important to do is help the graduate understand their role in the team, how their project makes a contribution to the wider team success. And I feel that helps them grow and have a more positive experience and want to stay in the profession. Another important aspect is to make time for your new graduates, especially in that first rotation. Oftentimes it's the first kind of professional job that they'll have. They'll probably feel a little bit out of depth to start with. So any time you can make available will be really helpful. Things just like a 5-minute daily check-in, more informal coffee catch-ups, and then of course a weekly one-to-one. I find I got the most out of those sessions where it was quite a informal environment in the sense that you could maybe bounce ideas around with each other. As a graduate, I could ask silly questions, but not feel there was a silly question and not get judged for that. And out of that, you get the best experience through that. Another aspect to this is if you're not making time, then graduates may not feel comfortable raising issues or concerns. They might just sit on them, and as a result, it snowballs into a bigger problem down the line. So yeah, just important to check in and talk and make time for each other. And another point that really helped my experience through the program was to just for a manager to celebrate success when it happened. So if there's a key project milestone that a graduate's delivered or they've done some really good pieces of work, just being able to call that out, recognize it maybe with not just your individual team but the wider procurement function, that has a really positive effect. And it's not something that is always done. We might try to just stay humble and keep a low profile, but yeah, if you can call it out, it just helps have a really positive experience. And ultimately, if they have that, then they'll want to stay in procurement and keep delivering and keep growing in this career choice.
Awesome. Thanks, Harry. Next, we'll go to Jessica. So same thing for you, Jess.
My name's Jess. I'm right at the very, very start of my procurement career. I'm currently part of the MBA graduate program for procurement, and I'm on my very first placement at the Ministry of Social Development. I've been there since February, so my spiel might be a little bit shorter than everyone else's, just to the nature of my role. Prior to this, I had some work experience, some professional work experience. So coming into this might have been a little bit different than other grads, but something that I have found to be really helpful. Try not to repeat what Harry said because I'm sure we have a lot of the same comments, but something that I found really helpful so far is having a manager that has a growth mindset and is willing to push me outside of my comfort zone, instead of just chucking me in the deep end and hoping sink or swim. I've got this like little analogy of they chuck you in the deep end, but they've actually given you the resources and the support to do well. You know, they've given you like a pool floaty, little like pool noodles, so you actually can have some support around you rather than just sink or swim. You've got all the tools that you need to succeed in pushing outside of that comfort zone. Another thing that I've found really helpful in the past few months is that my manager has set the expectation with the wider team of how a grad should be treated and how a grad can have the opportunity to learn and add value to the team and to the wider organization. So right from the get-go, the team have been, you know, really stoked to have me on board rather than feeling like, oh, this person that I've got to teach all these things to. They've actually been really excited to like nurture my learning and growth opportunities and really letting me step up to the plate, take the lead on certain things. So that's really key, that it's across the wider team, not just with your manager, because you are going to be working or you're going to be putting your grad on like a wide range of projects. And that's something that I found to be really useful.
Cool, thank you, Jess. Next, we'll go to Isabel.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Isabel. I joined the MB Procurement Graduate Program at the start of 2021 after graduating at the end of 2020. So I was straight out of university into my first role. My first rotation was at Oranga Tamariki, and I ended up staying there for 2 rotations. And then I'm currently seconded at the Ministry for Primary Industries. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to what makes a good manager and share how my manager at Oranga Tamariki supported me and helped me through a difficult time. I'm going to be quite candid about some health issues, so I hope you don't mind sharing. So I started my first procurement role in rotation in February, and only 1 month later, just as settling in, I came off my mountain bike face first into a bank and concussed myself. For those of you unfamiliar, concussions can either pass with ease or linger for ages and wreak havoc on your life. And unfortunately, my case was the latter. Initially, I was told it wasn't a concussion, so I tried to make a standard return to work, but it was quickly evident that I was not okay, and I went and got diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome. I'm aware I haven't got to the point yet, but for a quick overview of what this entailed, I couldn't handle daylight. I was really sensitive to noise. I was incredibly fatigued all the times, and I had chronic headaches to the point that it was almost like a permanent migraine. These headaches were also particularly triggered by concentrating and computer screens, and I'm sure we can all attest to procurement work entails a lot of concentrating on computer screens. So my work environment was not helping. I was restricted to working 4 hours a day, 4 days a week. Admittedly, this sounds pretty idyllic, but that was a challenge. It was pushing my capacity, and at the same time, I found it really personally challenging. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I always like to push myself, so I struggled with being quite literally physically and mentally incapacitated at a time where I wanted to be proving myself and doing the best to start to my career. So the concussion also served to exacerbate some pre-existing chronic health issues. So by the time it was May, just a few months into my supposed new career, I wasn't doing great. And this is where my manager came in. I credit her with my making it through that first year in procurement. She offered unwavering support and kindness in the face of every new health issue I came to her with, which, as you can see, there was a lot. It was this level of empathy and genuine caring for my well-being that transformed what was a personally difficult year into one where I felt at home, capable, and excited about my future in procurement. I think especially coming from an understaffed and demanding retail job in which working while sick was normal, if not expected, it was such a change to feel genuinely supported and looked after. So yeah, during the initial months where I was only working about half time, she still managed to strike a careful balance between not overloading me with work, but still making sure I was being productive and contributing to the team and feeling like an important part of the team, even if I was barely there. She was excellent at checking in to see that I was still handling everything and being available for my queries whenever they came up, which, as Jess said, was quite a lot. Got a lot of questions at the start of your new role. She also very kindly accepted for me to stay at Oranga Tamariki for a further 6 months in my second rotation, so I could get a full round of experience working in a procurement department. She even trusted me to I ended up leading a end-to-end procurement process, which was challenging and rewarding. And she had a lot of trust and freedom in me to do this my own way. And it was, yeah, a very formative experience for me. So even outside of the health issues, she was a very impactful manager for a number of other reasons. I feel like I've gone on a bit, so I'll summarize. I found her incredibly inspiring due to how impassioned she was. This was clearly more than just a job in government bureaucracy to her. She was incredibly passionate about both oranga tamariki and procurement as a lever for change. She was personable and open and excellent at recognizing her team's various styles and how they responded to management. Such as I often lacked confidence, especially as I was new, and she made sure to give me positive feedback to bolster my own confidence in my own ability, pass on positive feedback from other team members whenever she received it, and also constructive criticism when necessary. She struck a really good balance between giving me interesting work that was developing my own abilities and also recognizing when she'd given me too much, like a very complex project that I might need a bit more support on. So even though she was really busy, she always made time for my questions. And she was also really happy to take on feedback. So it was a two-way street and she would adjust accordingly. So yeah, I think the main takeaway from that whole experience with her was to tune into your employees' needs and have empathy and be open with your employees, and they'll be open with you.
Cool, thanks Isabel. And then last but not least, Alice.
Kia ora koutou, ko Alice Barry, toko ingoa. I feel quite funny thinking about my grad journey because I'm like a oldie grad now, but it was my like opening door into the procurement world, and it was amazing. You know, I wouldn't be where I am now without having the opportunities and the networks and the experience that I gained in the grad program. So I started off my journey at Oranga Tamariki and MSD. It was an awesome 6 months worth of both of those departments, which was absolutely fantastic. Delved into a lot of different procurements there. I then went and joined the biosecurity scientists at MPI, which was wildly fascinating and not a world I'd ever thought that I would dive into. I then took a swift right turn into the world of tax and went to IR. And was lucky enough to have a bit of a prolonged secondment there. It ended up being 8 months rather than 6 because I had such an amazing experience there. I wanted to keep going and finish off some projects. I then left the grad program and went into a role at the Ministry of Education with their newly formed, at that time, social services team, which was cool, and then got the opportunity to come into Waka Kotahi, the transport agency. So I sort of swam around, or I suppose I rather drove around in the transport world for ended up being almost 3 years, and did a lot of work in the social and sustainable outcome space, or broader outcomes. And this is week 2 of my current role as the Principal Advisor Commercial Partnership. So I'm looking after and enabling an awesome team of 6. We're about to go to 8, possibly 9. So really exciting time to be part of council and step into a leadership role. And I really love listening to what you guys, Harry, Jess, and Isabel, are talking about managers, because I've been lucky enough to share a number of managers that you guys have had. And something that has really stood out to me, I can never think of just one thing. So I've gone with 5, what makes a good manager. Someone who is curious, someone who is outcomes focused, someone who is empathetic, someone who prioritizes their team. But I think most importantly, and this has been the defining feature of the great managers that I've had as opposed to others that I've had, they've really understood the value of growing a person as a person, not just as a professional. And I think there's quite different approaches that you can take if you're just growing someone to be a good worker versus you're growing someone to be a better person and growing them more holistically. So that's me. Back to you, Joseph.
Cool. Thank you very much, Alice. Great hearing from everyone. There's definitely a few kind of key themes, which I think you really touched upon there, Alice, but it's quite interesting to hear the similarities between what everybody thinks makes a good manager. So we'll move on to the Q&A kind of section of today. So if you have any questions, please throw them into that Q&A box, and I'll hand back over to Barbara to ask the questions.
Yes. Thank you all. That was really insightful, and I'm sure there'll be some interesting questions come our way. Just to get us going, let's start with what advice would you give to managers looking to take on a grad, like a procurement grad in this case, of course, or someone even maybe new to the industry that's not in the procurement grad program per se, but maybe new to the procurement profession. Jessica, any thoughts about that one?
Yeah, I've got heaps to say as I'm the newest. So my first piece of advice is to make sure that your grad has that you're preparing them to have a good understanding of the procurement process at your organization. If you're like me, it's your first placement, you come in and you have probably gone through like a 1 or 2 day induction, but realistically you're so freaked out on the first week that you don't actually remember any of that. And I think a really key thing that has helped me is that my manager took me through all the steps of the procurement process at MSD and like how long each step typically takes. And to just assume, like, don't assume that they know the acronyms that you're talking about or the like specific jargon, because they probably don't, and they might just be sitting there with a sort of like glazed over look. I know I did that a few times. And then you quickly go and Google it afterwards because you're like, I've got no idea what that means. And so that was really key for me, is that my manager like took me through all the steps and kept revisiting it with me, and still does that now, to ensure I know all the different steps that I need to take. Another key thing is that the team is super welcoming. I mentioned this at the start, like to prep your team before your grad arrives. Let them know like if the grad is on their first placement, second, third, fourth, because that's going to be a completely different, like first versus third placement. They're not going to need as much like the covering the basics at the start. And something else is to get to know your new grad. Make the effort to get to know them as a person, like why they're interested in procurement, what challenges they can see themselves having in this role, what are their areas of personal interest when it comes to work. So, you know, why do they want to be at the organization they're placed at? What are some projects that they might like to work on? So getting to know them as a person is really helpful as well, and can help sort of steer your growth and learning pathway in a more tailored way, rather than just saying, oh, we'll get you to do SIPs. You know, they're going to line up better opportunities for you to learn. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Isabel.
Yeah, thanks very much. Some really good ideas there. Isabel, do you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, much like Jess said, I think making sure they know what's happening, because like Jess touched on, we all have different levels of familiarity with procurement, and things that may seem obvious to people that have been in the industry for a long time are definitely not obvious to people just coming into it. So tell them not to be afraid to ask questions, and that there's really no such thing as a stupid question. And something that I think all four of us touched on during our little presentations was availability, like being there for them at least once a week for check-ins, or just allowing them to like send you a quick Teams message with a question at any point, or if you are too busy, having someone that they can reach out to, like another person on the team who can be there as kind of a backup guidance. If you don't think there's enough time to be there to answer every single question, what my manager had me do was collate questions throughout the week, and then our checkups would just run through all of them. Just whatever came up during that week, I would ask, and then I'd get an answer, and then yeah. And I think it is important as they develop to put some trust in them to do things independently as well, and so they can go out, make their own mistakes, and learn how to rectify them themselves.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go to a question in the chat because I think it's quite a good one. Do you think 6 months is long enough for the placements? It's hard to get an end-to-end procurement completed in that time, especially in the social service space, and it seems the grads are keen to get these end-to-end opportunities. Harry or Alice, do you want to have a go? Let's go Harry first and then Alice.
Yeah, interesting question. Yeah, I think It's a good point. There's sometimes you get into a space where you want to take a meaty project, maybe it's a third or fourth rotation. Procurement or sourcing exercises can take quite a while. So yeah, you might not get the whole end-to-end experience in that 6 months. I think maybe it's just something to be managed on a case-by-case basis. Maybe have that discussion with the home manager, the MB manager. Yeah, I ended up being at Auckland Transport as an example for 2 years, and that started off as a 6-month placement. I managed to do some things in those 6 months, but just having the longevity beyond that, there was definitely value in that, and managed to get some great experiences from that. So yeah, I think case by case basis, and if the agency can do it, if they can accommodate longer than 6 months, then by all means, that would be awesome.
Alice, do you have any other thoughts on that, given the nature of the grad program? Yeah.
Yeah, I just echo what Harry says. So my last rotation that I did, so I technically only did 3 rotations, and my last one was extended. And that was only because I asked the question, can I extend it? Because I wanted to follow through and finish off the projects that I was working on. Guaranteed, not every single person that comes to the program will start their rotation. Even if we did move to 12, we'll start their rotation and finish their rotation, have a perfectly formed procurement process every single time. But there's ways that you can make that work. And I think if we remember that the outcome that the grad program is meant to create is that we grow the capability and the capacity of our procurement sector and the public sector. So if the right action is to extend a rotation, or switch a rotation if they're not working, I think we should be really, really mindful of that, what's working for both people. If there's a particular organization or team that's not ready for a grad, and then there should be some serious conversations around that. But if what gets us the best outcome is a rotation is extended, let's do that, for the sake of conforming to the 6 months that we said, and the result that someone doesn't get the right learning or contribute the value that they can give, it doesn't seem to make sense. So if it fits the outcome, let's do it.
Yeah, I think those are good answers. There does seem to be a fair amount of willingness around flexibility, and like you said, where the outcomes, where you might need a bit more time, that's great if it can be extended in case by case basis. Thank you for those. Okay, we've got a couple of interesting questions coming in. With regards to the comment around managers providing a lifeguard with floaties, a lifeguard and or floaties, what does this look like practically for you as grads? Now that's tricky. Jessica, I think it was your metaphor. Do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure. Great question. An example that I can give, I guess, because it's going to be different for every person. That's why, I would say it's key to get to know your grad. Every person's going to have things that they are maybe more nervous to do or have a bit of fear around doing. An example that I can use is chairing a moderation meeting. That was something that I identified with my manager. I was nervous to do it, and I was working on something that they were quite keen to get me having a go. And so what we did is they buddied me with the main person on my team working on this project. And for the first 2 moderations, there were 3 separate reviews. For the first 2 moderations, I listened. The first one, the second one, I ran the Excel spreadsheet and took the notes. And then on the third one, it was my opportunity to chair the first moderation. So by giving me the opportunity to do just listening, have a go at part of it, and then the full thing with another person from my team in the meeting there as backup for my first time, that's sort of what I'm referring to when I say that they're actually providing you support and while chucking you in the deep end. Because if it was up to me, I probably would have just put that off for ages and been like, oh no, I'm too scared. Or if I had gone from not being in a moderation at all to all of a sudden having to chair one, probably wouldn't have ended well. So by providing that support, it actually gave me the opportunity to succeed and learn at the same time, if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to go to a question that's in the chat. What do you think a manager can do to help you plan for your procurement career rather than just focusing on the current rotation? I think that's really interesting because not everybody ends up in a procurement career, but hopefully most of you will. And what do you see down the road as you needing, and what can happen during that process that you're in during the procurement grad process? Who wants to answer that? Alice, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, I'll give that one a go. I think I was quite blessed to have some managers who were always forward thinking in this way anyway. So that's a bit of luck really, to land a manager who's already aware that you should be thinking potentially a couple of roles ahead. I know that I had that conversation quite early on at IR by the amazing manager there. Sat me down and she was like, so well, where are you going to be in 5 years? And I thought, I don't know. I don't know. And then it took me sort of going away, coming back and being like, actually, what's my plan? Where do I want to go? And sometimes when you're new into a profession, in any profession, procurement's not an exception here, it takes you a bit of time to figure out what your rhythm is in that field, because procurement is really, really broad. You could be a tender specialist, you could be a supply relationship manager, you could be a sustainable procurement professional. You know, there's so many different things that you could do, working on so many different kinds of projects that all require different skill sets. So it's about figuring out where you want to go and then what skill sets you need to get there. And I think we talk about quite a bit in the wider sort of career field about jobs aren't this linear progression anymore. It's not that you start at a junior and end up at a principal or a whatever. You may be going, and I'll use this because it is the hierarchy, you know, up and then down, and then maybe you go sideways, and then maybe you jump out, and then maybe you jump back in. But whatever your own direction is, that's your path. So you need to have managers that are going to help you figure out what the paths are, and then create space in your day job, because it shouldn't be happening outside of your day job, in your day job where you can develop to get to that next level. And I think that kind of comes back to what I was referring to in the early stages of this webinar, that growing you as a person as opposed to professional might mean that you go on a non-procurement skill set course, because that's something that you need to grow. It may not be technical, but it may actually really help grow you as a person and contribute back more effectively to our profession, because we need to diversify our skill sets if we're going to keep relevant and keep interesting.
Yeah, that's super comments, Alice. Does anybody else want to dive into that answer, or I'll move on? Just stick your hand up. Isabel, you want to say a few things? Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that particularly in the first rotation, I guess you're new to it, so maybe things could be broad at that point. But after that, I think grad managers, I mean, hopefully they see the graduates as an asset of a sort. Even if they're new to the career, they've got fresh eyes and fresh perspectives. So hopefully you are gaining something from taking a grad into your agency. And as part of that, what can the grad take from your agency as like building capability in certain areas? So I think especially talking to them, what areas they are confident in and what areas they are not confident in. And if there's anything they've got a particular interest in, like when I came to Ministry of Primary Industries, I mentioned to my manager that I hadn't done any of the contracting stage of procurement, and he immediately set me to writing contracts and doing contract management and all that. And so, yeah, it was a completely new experience, felt like a completely new job, but at least I got that experience, and now I know that I've been part of the whole cycle, whereas previously I hadn't. So yeah, I think figure out the areas of interest and areas of confusion and work on both of them, even if the areas you're not familiar in, they might not be your favorite, but you want to develop them anyway.
Thanks, Isabel. I think we'll move to another question in the actual Q&A there. Now, not to get this too personalized, but have you or heard of maybe a placement that didn't work out for you, or a colleague, or something you've heard of, and what do you think could have been done differently for a good experience for that person? Or it might be yourself, but you know, Harry, are you able to comment on that one?
Yeah, happy to comment. getting the tricky questions. Yeah, look, it can happen. It does happen. Yeah, I was in a situation where I think I just had a very hands-off manager, in the sense that they probably weren't communicating day to day. Didn't really make clear what my expectations were as a grad, and what sort of things I could do at the agency, and those sorts of things. So in practice, I ended up more or less reporting to someone else in the leadership team, which look, it definitely worked out, and it was a good experience to learn from, even though it wasn't, picture perfect. But yeah, I think what could have been improved is just communication. Kind of going back to what I said before, just talking regularly, making it clear what the expectations were in terms of what I could and want to and can achieve with this agency in the next 6 months. Just having that up front, yeah, would have helped the situation, I think.
Just to build on that, I'm going to add a part B. You don't have to answer necessarily, Harry. Anybody else pitch in? In the procurement space, and the wider set of roles that you may have, is there anything that needs maybe to be done differently in terms of the procurement? Because we're talking certainly a lot about general management and good practice and those sorts of things. Is there anything that's getting missed or is missed or needs to be focused on when it comes to sort of the procurement world, or these different kinds of roles you might end up in?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I feel maybe just like in terms of procurement itself, if we really do commit to the planning and the managing stages, and really focus efforts there. I know that is the kind of the theory of how things are done these days, but yeah, I've also just experienced where a lot of time gets spent in that kind of sourcing or tendering stage. But yeah, there's always opportunity, maybe untapped, and once you get to a contract and really building your relationships with suppliers, and yeah, I think just really focusing on the kind of category management piece.
Well, no, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alice, did you want to jump in on that one, or shall we move on?
I just wanted to emphasize, so I've just jumped out of an innovation workshop, which is run by Creative HQ, and I'm going to be in that for the better part of all the morning for the next 5 days. It's got nothing to do with the procurement process, but everything to do with how we thinking better. And that's probably just one example where I've been given the opportunity, space has been made, and I've made space in my calendar to go and do something that I know is going to enhance my team and my organization, and most likely the profession by the time I go out and share these amazing ideas that we're getting already with the wider community here. But it's making opportunities for those and not reserving those opportunities for your most senior members of your team. That should be open to all members of your team, because they're going to be able to contribute back with their different skill sets so much more than if you just limit, this is grad learning and this is everyone else's learning. You're going to really undervalue your grad resources there if that's your approach.
Thanks for that. That's really useful. I'm going to go to a question in the chat, just quite specific to the grad program. How long were your inductions, and what did that induction cover? More corporate or procurement focused, or if you can remember back to that? Jessica, or do you remember?
I'll go, seeing as I'm the most recent one.
Oh, yeah.
The induction with MB was a bit different because of COVID, so it was online. It was basically 1.5 days online, and it was pretty procurement focused, I guess, on getting us up to speed with different stages of the procurement process, getting to know where to find information, where to find New Zealand government procurement rules, that sort of thing. And once I got to MSD, I would say personally it was more procurement focused, because I made it quite clear to my manager that I had a corporate role previously, sort of in between the time of finishing uni and starting the program. So yeah, they did make the effort to make it more procurement focused, and get me set up on all the different programs, access to all government panels, things like that. And that is what I found the most useful. I would just think it's key to speak to your grad, find out what their previous work experience is, if any, and then tailor it to them, past the standard online e-learning induction type of things that you need to do. Hope that answers.
Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, definitely. Great. I think we have only time for really one more. We'll go to the question about some constructive feedback during your procurement rotations that has helped you grow as a person or professional in the discipline. Isabel, do you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that something I found really valuable was someone who told me to cater my communications to my audience. I apparently love writing long, detailed emails that outline every stage of a procedure, but it was pointed out to me that when speaking to customers or businesses, they might not be interested in every single step that we're going through. So to keep things concise and to the point, and save your long emails for people that are within the procurement process and they want to know that sort of thing. So yeah, I found that really beneficial, and it's helped me keep my emails a bit shorter when needed.
Nice. Just want to squeeze in one quick one. What would your advice be to your younger self now that you know what you know? Who wants to answer that? Alice, do you want to have a go?
I'd probably just say don't be afraid to use your voice from day one. You've gone through, kind of to everyone's point here, you've gone through a rigorous process to get into the graduate program. So you should be comfortable using that voice, and managers should be making space for your voice as equally as important as anyone else in their team, because you are.
That's absolutely great. Yes, we all need the reminder of that one. And day to day gets so busy sometimes, that it can be get run over. Okay, I got to almost all the questions, not everyone's, so I apologize for that, but we really did go through quite a bit, and I really appreciate the panelists' personal contributions, your willingness to share, and your thoughts on what you've been through. I think it's a fantastic little session that we've been able to put together. So just quickly, upcoming activity for SIPs in Wellington, we have an event on the 18th of May, 5 to 7:30 p.m. And it's the impact of the Ukraine crisis on the New Zealand supply chain. It's sponsored by Russell McVeigh and held on level 24, 157 Lambton Quay. Of course, we all know there's been exposed vulnerability to global supply chains from many different directions recently, and unprecedented disruptions. We're going to have quite a sharing experience really about different angles on this, your shared experience about disruption, about what you think about how current events are shaping the procurement and supply profession. We'll discuss opportunities to mitigate concerns and issues brought up. So make sure you join and register by visiting events page on the website at sips.org, or the SIPS Australia and New Zealand LinkedIn webpage, which is really active. It's fantastic actually to get information and share information. I hope you found, on behalf of Joseph and our SIPS committee, we hope you found the webinar insightful. Please take a few minutes to complete the post-webinar survey. A link to the recorded copy of the webinar will be emailed to anyone registered by the end of the week. So we're pretty much right on time. Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you, panelists, for sharing your comments. And so that's the end of our webinar for today. Thank you very much.